Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly with Bray, and it is currently December 20th. So we've got some really long nights going on. It's the winter solstice tomorrow. And what better activity when the nights are really long and you can't be outside playing with your donkeys than going through and cleaning and oiling all of your tack? Now, a lot of folks in the donkey community don't necessarily come from an equestrian background, so this might be pretty new to some people. You might not really realize that this is a thing you need to do, but you really should be cleaning your tack anytime it gets sweaty. And you should be oiling your tack. And this is specifically leather tack. Obviously, biothane is a different situation. You do need to clean that when you use it. But your leather tack, you need to be oiling it at absolute minimum once a year. So if it gets wet a lot, if you're going through a lot of streams or rivers, or if your animals are getting really sweaty and you're having to clean it a lot, or if it's getting rained on, you do need to be oiling it more often. That moisture will cause it to get dry and cracked. But if you're not using it a whole lot, once a year is generally fine. The things you're going to need for this particular activity is some type of leather or saddle soap. I use Murphy's oil soap, glycerin based soap. It's pretty standard for cleaning tack. You're also going to need an oil. The label has come off of this, but it's Phoebing's brand Neat's Foot oil. Kind of any sort of oil will do. I've known people that oil their tack with olive oil, but I think that's a little bit expensive. But you can use various different kinds of oil. We're also going to oil the wood on our sawbuck. So that if you wanted to use like a linseed oil or a teak oil, something that's specifically for wood, you absolutely could do that. But I just used the Neat's Foot oil on that as well. And then you're going to need some water. I like to use these little sponges. These are tack cleaning sponges that you can get at any feed store. You can also get them at a lot of your just regular cleaning supply stores like Smart and Final or anything like that. A rag. I have a little thing here for my oil. This has got water in it. And then, of course, some clean surface on which to do this. The importance of cleaning your tack and oiling your tack really can't be overstated. As I said, it will start to dry out and get kind of crunchy, and it will start to crack. And obviously you're going to have safety issues if your leather starts to crack. You don't want to be out somewhere packing or working your animal and something cracks and breaks. So it's really essential, especially in Arizona where it's so dry, to make sure you're keeping this oiled. And another really important part of this is when you're cleaning it, when you're taking it all apart and cleaning it and oiling it, you're going to inspect it and you're going to look all over for cracks, and you're going to look for any loose pieces or anything that looks like it might need to be replaced. That's an important part of cleaning. That's why you should clean it routinely, and that's also a really important part of oiling. Finally, this is going to help folks kind of understand how their tack is put together and how to take it apart and put it back together, which kind of helps you to understand how to adjust and things like that. So it is important to know how your tack goes together and how to use it and how to put it back together, how it belongs. So if you don't know, go ahead and just take a picture of it when you start, or film yourself taking it apart so you can put it all back together again at the end. Because what nobody wants is a whole pile of little hardware bits and little leather strips, and you don't know where they go. So first things first, we've got our sawbuck. I use these pads that attach to the sideboards of my sawbuck, so I've taken them off. We have removed our breast collar and our breechin, and we have those all set aside. I did start this before the video, so you'll note these did start the same color as this. They are the same leather. When you oil them, though, they will darken, and they'll go back to the color that they were, or close to it anyway. It might take a few days, but if you look at that and you think, oh no, now it looks nearly black and I liked that nice russet color, it will go back to the russet color. But you can see this is oiled, this is not. This will go back in a couple of days to this russet color. But so to start off, we take our rag and we want to wipe off any dust that's anywhere and just get that kind of tidied up so that we're not making mud. And then we take one of our clean sponges and we get it in the water. I've already used this one a little bit, so it's not really clean. It's got some Murphy's on it, but we wring it out as well as we can, get as much water out as we can. And then we take our Murphy's oil soap and we just dab a little on there like this. If you're me and you've got cats that are running amok, you close the lid so they don't knock it over. And how I like to do this is one piece at a time, just so we don't get our things mixed up. I will take this off, take the buckle off, and I just attach these together so that I know they go back on this piece. And then we take our sponge and we just run it over. If there's any spaces that have a little bit of the kind of tarnishing from the metal, from the buckles, you can just work that out. But we take that. If you've got sweat, again, you can just buff it out as you need to. And we go over all sides. And then we take our rag and we just go ahead and dry that off. Now this glycerin soap, if you leave bubbles, they will just kind of dry on there. So I just take the buckle, push the bubbles out of the holes, and just wipe them off. Because otherwise they'll dry in there and they'll be a little bit gummy like glycerin gets. So that's how I go through and just tidy up all of those holes. But it's really as simple as that to clean it. Like I said, if you've got sweaty bits, which are usually going to be like on the backs of these little turned back pieces, you just buff them out. You just work a little bit harder on that, buff them out, wipe that off, and that's all there is to the cleaning portion of cleaning your leather. After we've got it cleaned, we've cleaned it with our Murphy's oil soap and water and wiped it off with our clean rag. Then we're going to take our neat's foot oil or your leather conditioner of choice and a different little sponge. We're just going to dab that in there, wring it out a little bit, and then we just paint it on. And it's very simple. The thing is, on your leather, any part that moves a lot is going to dry out sooner. So you can see that these parts that don't move a lot, the oil just kind of sets on top. It will soak in. But these parts here that move a lot more, the oil soaks in a lot quicker. So we are going to focus on that and get a lot of oil to those spaces. And then obviously the back side, the rough side, is going to soak in a lot more as well. So I like to focus on those parts where it soaks in really quickly and just make sure I get a lot of oil on those. The other thing you want to focus on is any point that loops back. Also, if you have a cat, they are going to love the smell of this. They're going to really enjoy that. But any part that loops back, this is where you'll see your cracks generally first or next to your holes. So if you start seeing cracks here, you need to replace that piece of tack. But to prevent those cracks, we just really focus on going in there with our oil. And I will go back on those sections several times throughout this cleaning and oiling evening. So I just kind of start on there, I work to the end, and then I go back and I do it again. And if there's any parts that are kind of hard to get, you can use a paintbrush to get them. I know people that like the little sponges on a stick that you use for like crafting. You can just like squeeze your sponge and drip oil in there. It'll soak up. It's not a big deal, but you just want to run that oil down both sides and then your edges. And like I said, I like to go as many times as I need to, which just means the oil is not soaking in quickly anymore. So if that oil gets soaked right up really quickly, your tack is dry and you need to go over it a few more times with that oil. And as I said before, it's going to change color pretty dramatically. It will go back. It will go back to this russet color. It might be a touch darker, but it will go back to this, and it will turn back to this color within, 2-3 weeks at the very most. So I also like to kind of pinch this leather like this and see that it's not lightening up significantly. When it doesn't lighten up significantly, I feel like that means I've got my oil all in there and saturated. Another thing I like to do after I've gotten it really saturated, and you might even go in the next day and do this, is I like to just roll it like this, and then I'll flip it over and roll it the other way. And that just helps keep this leather really soft and supple so that it's just really nice to work with. But when we are ultimately done with everything, then you just pop your buckles back on. They will need to be adjusted unless you wrote down what size they go on. You could do that, but that seems like a lot of work. You'll have to readjust them once you get them back on your animal. But you just pop your buckle back on. And there you go. You move on to the next piece. Finally, once your leather is all done, and this isn't done, I still have to work on it. But as I said, if you've got a wooden sawbuck or any wood portion of your setup that is not sealed, if it's just stained, you're going to also need to oil this. So people who are better at this than me, they will go ahead and even take these off, unscrew them and take them off, but I'm not going to do that. If you're doing serious packing out in the backcountry and you can get yourself in trouble by your stuff breaking, you definitely want to do that. This is more of a parade pack. It's not going to be a real crisis if something gets a little cracky, but we still want to prevent it, but still, we probably won't end up in crisis. But to prevent your wood from splintering and splitting, you're also going to want to oil that. So basically the same thing. You're going to take your Murphy's oil soap, you're going to wash it down, you're going to wipe it dry, and then you're going to take your oil and run it over the top. Just like with your leather, this is going to change the color temporarily. Don't worry about it. It will generally go back. So you want to keep all of your tack nice and clean and moisturized. Nobody wants to be crispy crunchy in the winter. It's bad for your animal to wear. If you notice your stuff getting kind of crunchy and sitting kind of funky, that's obviously going to cause rubs and problems. If it's nice and oiled, it's going to stay really supple. It's going to form more to their shape. It's going to be more comfortable for them to wear, and it's going to be safer for you because it's going to be less likely to crack and break in a situation where you don't want that to happen. So while the nights are long, take your saddle soap, take your oil, take your sponges, take your rags, take your tack apart, and be sure you spend some time cleaning and oiling and inspecting all of your tack.